Okay, question 4H here. We gotta remember we're solving these equations by factoring. So the very first thing that I see when I take a look at this equation here, even before I bring everything over to one side, I notice that there's a common factor of 3 to everything. So I'm just going to divide everything by 3 to get 6x squared equals x plus 1. I just don't want to be working with bigger numbers than I need to. And now I've got that reduced down, and it's a quadratic, so I'm going to bring everything over to one side of the equation, and I'm going to bring it over to the side of the equation that gives me a positive quadratic term. And now I factor it just like I've been factoring normally. I'm going to multiply the 6x squared by the negative 1, so I'm looking for two expressions here, two terms whose product is negative 6x squared and whose sum is negative x. And because, again, because the product is negative, they've got to have different signs, and because the sum is negative 1, the bigger one has to be negative, so it's got to be negative 3x and 2x. So I put my binomials there, and I remember that these two values that I just found, these are not necessarily terms in the binomial. What they are the outer and the inner products. The first two terms, their product has to be 6x squared. The first term and the last term, those two, their product has to be negative 3x. And so I'm trying to think here, what's the largest factor of both 6x squared and negative 3x? And remember, that negative, I'm going to deal with that over here in the second term, not the first one. So I'm going to make this 3x here. By default, then, that makes this term here 2x, so that their product is 6x squared. 3x multiplied by this outer term here has got to give me negative 3x, so it's got to be negative 1. And then here, 2x times this term here has got to be 2x, so this has got to be positive 1. And so now I factored that. And I'm going to get rid of the little things that I'm using here to help me out with the factoring. And I've got two factors here whose product is 0, which means one of these two factors at any given time is going to 0. So the first factor here goes to 0. Bring the 1 over, it becomes negative 1, divide by 3. So if x is equal to negative 1/3, then that first factor goes to 0, the whole thing goes to 0. For my second factor, bring the 1 over, divide by 2. If x is equal to 1/2, then that second factor goes to 0, which causes the whole thing to go to 0. So my two solutions, possible solutions here are negative 1/3, or sorry, I shouldn't say possible solutions. The two solutions are negative 1/3 and 1/2.